funny thing, the hypocrisy of the liberal media in all of our countries is that on the one hand, they are constantly criticizing about the rising violence against women, especially Dalit women in my country. There is a constant news item, almost depressing to read about, like 4 or 5 on a daily basis. And on the same hand, on the same website, you will see younger women who say just about barely 20 or something, talk about how they found bondage and rape foreplay, or whatever it is that they call it, empowering, and how she turned into a confident woman at her workplace because she had this BDSM experience with some random guy she hooked up with. We are never talking about how you can turn a man into different kinds of things for profit. You're never talking about that. It is always a vulva owner and a man. It is always about the issues that menstruators and chest feeders go through, and then there's men in the north, like calling women menstruators, calling women vulva owners, vagina havers, and things like that. It is happening in India as well. It is ridiculous because non-profit organizations, women's rights organizations, on their websites are proudly, writing in their about us section, description and things like that about how they are for all menstruators.
Why do you think that is? That those women's organizations are acting that way?
I don't know. They probably get money from all these corporations from their CSR funds that are set aside by corporations. A large chunk of money goes to non-profit organizations, and if they constantly keep supporting the agenda that is popular globally, then it will fall in the purview of the corporations that are looking for an NGO to give away their CSR funds. Like the CSR fund is something that you have to give away every year. If you keep it, then it will be taken away from you, and or it will be taxed and things like that. So every corporation at the end of a financial year is trying to give away a good chunk of money away for non-profit organization. They pick a cause or something like that. They come off as this holier than thou, world savior, that sort of a thing. But the truth is, anything that is popular catches their eye, obviously. So multi-billion companies are having YouTube channels where they are inviting trans and non-binary people to educate the world about the fluidity of gender. And there are these other organizations that are tied up to it. So surely that corporation is giving money to this NGO to get all these people to talk about it on YouTube so that they can more likes and shares and things like that. It ultimately boils down to social capital and economic capital and things like that.
And then they use those people that they managed to get on TV to say, well, the local population wants these policies, and then that's how you promote the legislation.
Yes.
I think it's sad in a way, but it's almost as if we're watching in real life everything that we think that we learn maybe on books, like I think it was Julie Bindel who said recently that feminism is the only movement in which anti-feminists infiltrate the movement, pretending to be feminists, and then tell the real feminists that they're fascists or that they're oppressors and misogynists and all that kind of stuff. Like that wouldn't happen in like communism, for all its faults. It's like you wouldn't get like a capitalist infiltrating communism and telling those real communists, well, actually, like what you're doing is against the working class. But it happens to women because we're so devalued in society. And I think that is sort of like this it just feels like, when someone is mocking you, when someone is like making fun of you, it just feels like that's happening to us every single day that this continues. Every time you see a women's organization, a feminist organization talk about like non-men or talk about menstruating people, I saw a Spanish speaking organization said something like, if you are the proprietor of a vagina, like it was, if you are the proprietor, like where do I pay my taxes? If you're the proprietor of a vagina, X and Y, every time you see a feminist organization speaking that language, it just feels like patriarchy is mocking us by saying like they are so stupid that the organizations meant to represent their rights are openly throwing them under the bus. And you have an audience that sometimes applauds that, and that audience is obviously the audience that doesn't want women to have actual sex-based rights that are for women, that are established for women independently. But instead of openly referring to it as misogyny, then we can masquerade it as progress. There's this, it feels like this whole gender imposition of gender identity politics, the whole purpose of it is to turn every gain that the movement has made and say, oh, you can have the vote, then we're going to take away your citizenship, or you can, or you raise awareness about the pay gap in workplaces. Well, we're going to make sure that we difuminate, we dilute sex statistics. So you can never really know what the pay gap actually is if you don't have any sex segregated statistics. Or you've made a big noise about like violence against women. We're just going to make sure that you cannot record sex. So then you can say that there's all of this violence against women. It's always like everything that women manage to gain, if we manage to gain traction in society as a movement, as a political movement, the feminist movement is a political movement. We managed to create and gain traction in society, and in come these theories to take away the power from it. Like, it's very thorough and it's very wide because it's happening in India, it's happening in the Dominican Republic, and it's like if a big problem in the Dominican Republic is violence against women, but now we have no statistics to know who women are, then how are we even going to combat that? You get frustrated. That's why I say that I hate having to focus on like the personal aspect of this, because it's like from a political aspect and like a public policy aspect, it's so insidious and sinister and sick what is happening worldwide when it comes to women's rights. We have a feminist movement, but if we don't have an organized political subject, women, then what do we have? We have nothing.
Another way in which I've noticed how the global north is sort of using capitalism to induce gender into global south is when these multinational organizations bring in builders and architects from abroad who are now building them swanky web offices that have a very fun vibe to it, where basically it is to say that you come into office and you stay here till you die and you never leave because we provide you with everything. But in that, what they're also doing is, there is no sexual harassment policy in most of the companies in India. But you know what is going to happen soon enough when all these new buildings come up? There are going to be no female only toilets anymore because they are building gender neutral toilets, because apparently that is one of the highlights of such new architecture, because it is in line with the moving times, with the current times, and therefore anybody who's questioning that is considered to be old fashioned or prudish or something like that, where you must just accept this as it is. Now, this is the same organization that doesn't have sexual harassment policy. And if a woman does go and complain, they accuse the woman for either falsifying it or fabricating it and things like that. How is it okay that if you are now creating an atmosphere for more such harassment to happen, an act where you already have no model of recourse in your organization in the first place? This is all the effects of global north, because this whole concept of gender neutral toilets is perverse, because in India, majority of women in the rural areas have to defecate in the open. They have to wake up like 3 a.m. or something, walk really far away and defecate, and then come back and bathe and be ready before the men go there, because 99% of the time, wherever the women defecate, men sort of go around there and sexually harass them or rape them. So they have to find a new place every morning, and they are susceptible to, say, snake bites or some animal running into them and things like that, and just general precariousness of doing all of this in a pitch dark foresty place. Now, that being the case, and these are the same people that criticize all that about how we need to have toilet in rural areas and things like that. Again, toilet is the same place where men hover around, and if you sit down, there are 4 men coming towards the toilet, and they know that you will be vulnerable in there. Therefore, they find that place to be the target Now, this is all happening. And at the same time, in corporations, if you're going to build me a toilet where if I'm inside a stall and there is a man outside using a urinal, how the hell am I going to open the stall and come out of the toilet? You have to accept it. You do not have a choice, or we shun you, or you can go find another company to work for, or don't pay, or something.
If you're a company that has no sexual harassment policy, and you're creating gender neutral toilets, and you're creating an environment, a structural environment where sexual harassment is likely to thrive, then you don't want to have a policy, because then that would get reported. I mean, it's very in your face, but it's one of those things in which like women manage to make a lot of noise. Like for us to have a conversation about the need of girls who are going to school, or just women in general, to have toilet facilities, like that's a human right. We recognize that as a human right, but we recognize that today as a human right because feminist campaigners made a lot of noise about it for ages. So now on top of that, now that we've managed to create a national, international conversation about it, then we get the subtext of like, well, actually all toilets should be gender neutral, right? So it's like anything that we fight for because we want it, because we need it, then that gets manipulated, but it's more like co-opted. It is co-opted to take away its power, to take away its strength. You know, it's like, I think we are living through a patriarchal phenomenon that is so savage in the way that it's like, we're not allowed to have anything, not even a toilet where you can go every morning, not even a policy that you can use to denounce harassment in your workplace, you know? And it just feels very, it's very brutal, it's very savage, but the only, is horrible, but the only positive that I see is that, you know, this would only work and continue to strive as long as there's no conversations like the ones that we're having.